The trial was held in the same chamber where 198 humans had died. It was a deliberate choice. Ambassador Park had insisted on it. "Let them stand where our people fell," he said. "Let them breathe the same air. Let them feel the weight of what they did." The 7 leaders of the guilty races stood in the center of the room. Their hands were bound with simple restraints. Their faces showed different emotions: fear, defiance, shame, hatred. They had ruled their worlds with absolute power. Now they waited to hear their fate. Around them, representatives from every species in the galaxy watched. The chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of translation devices. Ambassador Park rose to speak. He moved slowly, still recovering from the poison that had nearly killed him. But his voice was strong. "1 year ago, I stood in this very room," he said. "I believed I was witnessing the greatest moment in human history. Instead, I witnessed the worst. My colleagues died around me. My friends choked on poison while our hosts watched and smiled." He walked toward the accused. "I could have died here. I could have died here. By all rights, I should have died here. But I survived. And because I survived, I carry a responsibility. I must speak for those who cannot speak for themselves." He stopped in front of the High Counselor of Vethra Prime. "You called us dangerous animals. You said we deserved to die. Tell me, when you watched our people suffer, did you feel anything at all?" The High Counselor raised his head. His eyes still held defiance. "I felt satisfied. I felt that the galaxy was being protected from a threat. I would do it again if given the chance." Park nodded slowly. "I believe you. That is what makes this so difficult." He turned to address the chamber. "Humanity has debated long and hard about what to do with these prisoners. Many of our people wanted execution. An eye for an eye. Blood for blood. It would be simple. It would be fair. And it would accomplish nothing." Murmurs rippled through the alien representatives. "If we kill these leaders," Park continued, "they become martyrs. Their followers will say they died bravely for their beliefs. Their crimes will be forgotten. Their ideas will survive." He paused. "We will not give them that honor." The sentence was read by Admiral Quan himself. The 7 guilty leaders would not be executed. Instead, they would spend the rest of their lives traveling from world to world, from school to school, telling the story of what they had done. They would look into the eyes of children and explain why they had voted to kill an entire species. They would answer questions. They would face judgment not once, but every single day. "You wanted to erase humanity from history," Admiral Quan said. "Instead, you will spend your remaining years teaching the galaxy what happens when fear replaces reason. Every child who hears your story will learn the lesson you never learned. That diversity makes the galaxy stronger, not weaker." The High Counselor's defiance finally cracked. "That is worse than death," he whispered. "Yes," Admiral Quan agreed. "It is." After the trial, something unexpected happened. The 5 races who had voted against the massacre came forward. Their leaders spoke with shame in their voices. "We knew what was planned," they admitted. "We opposed it, but we did not stop it. We stayed silent when we should have spoken. We share in the guilt, even if we did not share in the vote." Ambassador Park listened to their apologies. He thought carefully before responding. "You did not poison our people," he said finally. "But you stood by while others planned their deaths. That is a kind of guilt, too." He paused. "However, we believe in second chances. We believe that people and species can change. We will forgive you, but we will not forget. New alliances were formed that day. Not alliances of conquest or power, but alliances of trust. The 5 repentant races pledged to work with humanity. Together, they would build a new council, one based on openness and honesty, rather than fear and manipulation. 1 year later, a new space station was completed. It was built at the exact location of Station Meridian, in orbit around the same star. But this station was different. It was called the Memorial of Hope, and at its center was a garden containing 198 trees, one for each human who had died young. Delegate Nahai 1 gave the dedication speech. She was only 26 years old, but she had been chosen to represent Earth's next generation. She stood before representatives from dozens of worlds and spoke with quiet confidence. "My grandmother survived the massacre," she said. "Ambassador Park is my grandmother's oldest friend. I grew up hearing stories about the people who died here. They were scientists and soldiers, poets and engineers. They believed that the stars belonged to everyone, not just to those who arrived first." She gestured to the garden behind her. "These trees will grow for centuries. Long after I am gone, long after everyone here is gone, they will still stand. They are a promise to the future, that we will never forget what was lost, but we will also never stop hoping for what might be gained." After the ceremony, Ambassador Park walked alone through the garden. He stopped at each tree and whispered a name. He had done this many times over the past year. He would probably do it for the rest of his life. At the last tree, he found someone waiting for him. It was a young Vethra, barely old enough to leave her home world. She held a small flower in her hands. "Ambassador Park?" she asked nervously. "I'm sorry to bother you. My name is—" "It does not matter. I wanted to give you this." She held out the flower. It was purple, with delicate petals. "This flower grows only on Vethra Prime," she explained. "It blooms once every 10 years. My grandmother saved this one for me, but I want you to have it. I want to say, I am sorry for what my leaders did, for what my people did. I was just a child when it happened, but I carry the shame anyway." Park took the flower gently. He looked at the young Vethra with tired, kind eyes. "What is your name?" he asked. "Kethva," she said. "It means new beginning in our language." Park smiled. It was the first real smile he had shown in a long time. "Kethva," he repeated. "That is a beautiful name, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. You were a child. The choices of your leaders were not your choices. But the guilt belongs to those who made the decisions, not to those who must live with the consequences." He placed the flower at the base of the nearest tree. "Thank you for this gift. It means more than you know." Hydra bowed and hurried away, but Park saw her glance back with something like hope in her eyes. Later that day, a human child arrived at the garden with her family. She was young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She carried a handful of paper flowers she had made herself dot at the central fountain. She met Kethva, who was still wandering the garden. The two children looked at each other with curiosity, but no fear. "Do you want to help me put these on the trees?" the human girl asked. Kethva nodded. "I would like that." Together, they walked through the garden, placing flowers at the base of each tree. Human hands and Vethra claws, working side by side. Ambassador Park watched them from a distance. Lieutenant Commander Yunhana, now promoted to captain, stood beside him. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. "The peace, I mean." "The alliances." Park considered the question for a long moment. "I do not know," he admitted. "There will always be fear. There will always be those who want power at any cost. But there will also be children like those two. Children who do not see enemies. They just see other children." He wiped his eyes. "We did not burn the galaxy when we had the chance. We chose justice over revenge. We chose hope over hatred. That is not a guarantee of peace. But it is a beginning." Hana nodded. "A new beginning." "Yes." Park watched the children disappear among the trees. "And that is all we ever needed." The stars above shone cold and bright. They had witnessed the massacre. They had witnessed the war. Now they witnessed something rarer. They witnessed forgiveness. And across the galaxy, beings who had once looked at humanity with fear began to look at them with something else. The human fleet reached Vethra Prime on a cold morning. Admiral Quan Jamin stood on the bridge of the ESV Judgment and looked at the planet below. It was beautiful in a strange way. Green oceans and purple forests covered its surface. Millions of Vethra lived there, going about their daily lives. Most of them had never voted for humanity's death. Most of them had not even known about the plan, but their leaders had. Admiral Quan opened a communication channel. His voice reached every ship in the fleet and every receiver on the planet below. "This is Admiral Quan of Earth Fleet. We have come for justice, not destruction. I speak now to the leaders of the 7 races who voted for our extinction. You have one chance. Surrender yourselves to human custody, and we will spare your worlds. Refuse, and we will come for you by force." He waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. Finally, a response came. High Counselor Vethra Prime appeared on the screen. He was older than the other Vethra, with gray patches on his shell and slow movements in his limbs. But his eyes still burned with hatred. "Admiral Quan," the High Counselor said, "you are making a terrible mistake. The Council has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. You think your little fleet can challenge us? You are nothing but clever animals. You deserve to die, and you still deserve to die. Then you refuse to surrender? I refuse to even consider it." The High Counselor leaned forward. "Do you know why we voted to kill you? It was not because you were weak. It was because you were dangerous. You grow too fast. You adapt too quickly. You form bonds with other species too easily. In another 100 years, you would have changed the entire galaxy. We could not allow that." Admiral Quan nodded slowly. "I understand. You were afraid. We were protecting the natural order. The strong rule. The weak serve. Humans upset that balance. You had to be removed. And the poison? The ceremony? The lies? Necessary actions. We could not fight you openly. Your kind is too stubborn to surrender. So we found a cleaner way. It should have worked. If you had all died as planned, this conversation would not be happening. But we did not die. And now you face the consequences." The High Counselor laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Consequences? Look around you, Admiral. My fleet defends this world. My allies defend their worlds. You cannot strike all 7 at once. You will be stretched thin, and we will destroy you piece by piece." Admiral Quan smiled. It was not a warm smile. "High Counselor, you have made 2 mistakes. First, you assumed we came alone. Second, you assumed we cannot strike all 7 worlds at once." He pressed a button. On screens across the galaxy, displays updated. Human fleets appeared around not just Vethra Prime, but around all 7 guilty homeworlds simultaneously. 3,000 ships had become 15,000. Hidden reserves called up from secret bases across human space. The High Counselor's face went pale. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "We have been preparing for this moment for 50 years, Admiral Quan said. "We hoped we would never need these ships. But we built them anyway, because we are not stupid. We saw how you looked at us. We heard the whispers. We knew that someday someone might try to destroy us." He leaned forward. "You called us clever animals. You were half right. We are very clever." The High Counselor composed himself. "It does not matter. My fleet will fight. My people will resist. You cannot win. I do not need to defeat your fleet, High Counselor. I only need to reach you. Admiral Kwan gave the order. The battle for Vethra Prime began. It lasted 18 minutes. Human ships moved with precision that shocked the Vethra commanders. They disabled engines and weapon systems without destroying vessels entirely. They opened holes in the defensive formation and poured through. The Vethra fleet, for all its size, had not fought a real war in centuries. They moved slowly, communicated poorly, and panicked quickly. When it was over, the Vethra fleet was a cloud of drifting wreckage. Thousands of alien soldiers floated in escape pods, waiting for rescue. Very few had died. Human gunners had aimed to disable, not to kill. On the surface, Ambassador Pak Tai-Su prepared for his final mission. He was still weak from the poison. Doctors had told him to rest, to let younger people finish what he had started. He had refused. "I walked into that chamber with 200 of my people," he said. "I will finish this myself." He was given a broadcast channel that reached every world in Council space. His face appeared on billions of screens. The galaxy watched. "My name is Pak Tai-Su," he said. "I am the ambassador of Earth. Most of you know me as the survivor of the Station Meridian massacre. Some of you have called me a liar. Some of you have said the footage was fake. So let me show you something that cannot be faked." He began to read names. One by one, he spoke the names of every human who had died in the council chamber. With each name, a photograph appeared. Young faces, old faces, smiling faces, faces full of hope and curiosity. Cho Min-ho, junior diplomat. He wanted to be a poet. Kang Ji-young, senior scientist. She had 3 grandchildren. Yu Sung-jin, communications officer. He loved to cook for his friends. The list went on. 198 names. 198 stories ended too soon. When he finished, Park looked directly into the camera. "These are the people your leaders killed. Not because they were dangerous. Not because they threatened anyone. They were killed because a few powerful beings were afraid of what humanity might become. And when we lay dying, those same leaders laughed and called it an accident." His voice hardened. "We came in peace. You answered with poison. Now we answer with fire. But unlike you, we know how to control our flames." On the surface of Vethra Prime, strikes began. Not against cities. Not against homes. Against government buildings. Military bases. The bunkers where leaders hid. Warnings came first. "Evacuate this area. Strike incoming in 10 minutes. Humans gave time for workers and civilians to flee. Then the strikes landed, precise and devastating. One by one, the leaders of the 7 guilty races were captured. Some surrendered when Marines broke through their doors. Some fought and were subdued. One a general from another world took his own life rather than face trial. The High Counselor of Vethra Prime was found hiding in an underground bunker. Sergeant Ko and his Marines dragged him out into the light. "You cannot do this," the High Counselor screamed. "I am the leader of a great civilization. You are animals, primitives. You have no right." Ko looked at him with cold eyes. "You had no right to poison 200 innocent people. And yet you did it anyway." He pushed the High Counselor toward a waiting transport. "The galaxy will judge you now. I hope they are less merciful than we have been." Across the 7 guilty worlds, similar scenes played out. Leaders were arrested. Military commanders were captured. The architects of the massacre were finally brought to answer for their crimes. And through it all, human soldiers followed their orders. Punish the guilty. Protect the innocent. It was the hardest thing many of them had ever done. But they did it anyway, because that was what it meant to be human. Captain M. De Yeon was the youngest captain in Earth's fleet. She was only 32 years old, but she had already proven herself in a dozen training exercises. Now, standing on the bridge of the ESV Retribution, She faced her first real battle. The Council border was ahead. Hundreds of alien warships waited there, forming a defensive line that stretched across the darkness of space. "They think that wall will stop us," said fleet tactician Cha Yi-jin. She stood beside Du Yin, studying the tactical display. Yu-jin was a quiet woman who rarely smiled, but her mind worked faster than any computer. She had designed the battle plans that brought them here. "Will it?" Du Yan asked. "No." Yu-jin touched the display, and it zoomed in on the enemy formation. They are using the same defensive pattern they have used for 1,000 years. They have never needed to change it, because no one has ever challenged them. They have forgotten how to fight. Du Yan nodded. "And we have not." "Exactly." Behind them, in the ship's main bay, Master Sergeant Kao Byung-chul prepared his Marines for boarding operations. He was a large man with scars on his hands and grief in his eyes. His daughter had been one of the diplomats killed on Station Meridian. She had been 24 years old. She had wanted to be a poet. Now she was a name on a memorial wall, and her father was going to war. "Listen carefully," Kao told his soldiers. "We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice. There's a difference." A young Marine raised his hand. "What is the difference, Sergeant?" Kao looked at him for a long moment. "Revenge means killing everyone who hurt us. Justice means punishing only those who are guilty." He paused. "We will kill soldiers who fight us. We will arrest leaders who ordered our deaths. But we will not harm civilians. We will not burn cities. We are better than that." The Marines nodded, but some looked doubtful. They had seen the footage of their people dying. They had heard the Council's lies. Their anger was hot, and Hungry Chao understood. He felt it too. "I know what you are thinking," he said. "I lost my daughter in that chamber. I want to watch their worlds burn. But if we become monsters, then we prove them right. They called us dangerous animals. We will prove them wrong." The ship shuddered as it slowed. They had reached the battle line. On the bridge, Captain Im opened a channel to the enemy fleet. "This is Captain Im De Yin of Earth Fleet. We demand that you stand aside. We seek only the guilty. We have no quarrel with innocents." The response came quickly. "Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender immediately. You are criminals who have violated Council space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Du Yan looked at Tactician Cha. Cha shook her head slowly. "They still think we are primitives," Cha said. "Let us teach them otherwise." Du Yan nodded. "All ships, begin transmission." Across the fleet, every human vessel began broadcasting the same footage. The massacre on Station Meridian. The secret vote for extinction. Vethra's face as he watched humans die. The documents proving 20 years of planning. The broadcasts reached the enemy fleet. They reached the stations behind the fleet. They reached the civilian worlds beyond. For the first time, ordinary aliens saw the truth. "What is this?" demanded the enemy commander. "This is human propaganda. It is fake. Check the data signatures," Du Yan replied calmly. "They are genuine. Your leaders voted to kill us. Then they poisoned us and called it an accident. This is not propaganda. This is history." Silence filled the communication channel. Then, one by one, ships began to break formation. Not the ships of the 7 guilty races, they held firm. But the ships of the 5 innocent races began to pull back. "What are you doing?" The enemy commander screamed. "Return to formation." A voice replied, heavy with disgust. "We will not defend murderers." The Council betrayed its own principles. If the humans want justice, they can have it. We will not stand in their way. Within an hour, the defensive line had collapsed. Only the ships of the guilty 7 remained, and they were badly outnumbered. The battle was short and brutal. Human weapons were not more powerful than Council weapons. But human tactics were different. Council species had spent thousands of years fighting formal, predictable wars. Humans had spent their history fighting messy, desperate conflicts where only the clever survived. The Council ships expected their enemies to charge forward. Instead, human vessels darted and weaved, striking from unexpected angles. They targeted engines first, leaving enemy ships helpless but alive. They aimed for victory without massacre in 2 hours. The Council defense fleet was broken. Sergeant Kao led the first boarding team onto a captured station. His Marines moved quickly through the corridors, weapons ready. Alien soldiers surrendered when they saw the humans coming. They had heard stories about human brutality. They expected death. Instead, they were disarmed, bound, and left under guard. "You are not killing us?" one prisoner asked, confused. "You were following orders," Kao said. "You are not the ones we want." They found the station commander hiding in his office. He was a Vethra, one of the insectoid race that had planned the massacre. He wore medals on his chest and hatred in his black eyes. "You think you have won?" The commander hissed. "You have only made things worse. The Council will destroy your filthy planet. Every human will die screaming." Kao grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. His fingers tightened. One squeeze would crush the alien's neck. "My daughter's name was Kao Sumin," he said. "She wanted to be a poet. She wrote about stars and hope and the future. Your people killed her because they were afraid of what humanity might become." The commander laughed. "Good. I'm glad she is dead. I hope she suffered." Kao's hand shook. Every part of him wanted to kill this creature. It would be so easy, so satisfying. Instead, he let go. The commander fell to the floor, gasping. "You will face trial," Kao said. "You will answer for your crimes in front of the whole galaxy. Death would be too kind for you." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Marines secured the prisoner. Later that day, Kao found something unexpected on the station. A damaged section had been sealed off, but life signs showed inside. His Marines cut through the doors and found a group of Vethra children huddled in the darkness. A broken pipe had filled their section with toxic gas. They were dying. Kao's Marines looked at him, waiting for orders. These were the children of their enemies. No one would blame them if they simply walked away. Kao did not hesitate. "Get them out. Get them to medical." The Marines moved instantly. They carried the children to safety, gave them clean air, treated their injuries. One small Vethra looked up at Kao with confused, frightened eyes. "Why?" the child asked. "We are your enemies." Kao knelt down to the child's level. "You are a child. Children are not enemies. Children are the future." He stood up and walked away before anyone could see the tears in his eyes. Across the galaxy, footage of both events spread quickly. Sergeant Kao threatening the commander who mocked his daughter. Sergeant Kao saving enemy children without hesitation. The universe watched and wondered. Humans were capable of terrible fury, but they were also capable of unexpected mercy. Perhaps that was what the Council should have feared most of all. The news reached Earth at 3:47 in the morning, Seoul time. Within 1 hour, every human on the planet knew what had happened. Within 2 hours, the streets were silent. There were no riots. There was no screaming. There was no chaos. There was only silence. And that silence was more terrifying than any rage. Admiral Kwan Jamin stood in the war room deep beneath the mountains outside. So, he was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes that had seen too many battles. Around him sat the leaders of Earth's military forces. They had watched the transmission together. They had seen their people die. Now they had to decide what to do. "The Council claims it was an accident," said General Oh Dae-young, commander of ground forces. They say human biology was too weak for the ceremonial drink. Lies, Admiral Kwan said. His voice was calm, but his hands shook slightly. Look at their faces in the footage. Look at how Vethra steps back before the first human falls. He knew. They all knew. Dr. Shin Yumbai, chief of xenobiology, nodded. She had been studying the data since it arrived. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. I have analyzed the pathogen, she said. It was not an accident. This weapon was designed specifically for human DNA. It targets our nerve cells with perfect accuracy. Creating something like this would take decades of research. The room went quiet. Decades? Admiral Kwan asked. At least 20 years, Dr. Shin confirmed. They've been planning to kill us for 20 years. Maybe longer. Director Baek Sung-ho, head of intelligence, leaned forward. He was a round man with gentle features, but his mind was sharp as any blade. I have been studying the council species for 30 years, he said. I always suspected some of them feared us, but I never imagined this. He paused. I have new information. It took some work, but I found it. He pressed a button, and a document appeared on the main screen. It was written in an alien language, but the translation software worked quickly. 3 years ago, Director Baek said, the council held a secret vote. The question was simple. Should humanity be allowed to survive? Admiral Kwan's jaw tightened. And the result? 7 voted for extinction. 5 voted against. The room exploded with angry voices. Admiral Kwan raised his hand, and silence returned. Which 7? He asked. Director Baek listed the names. Vethra species was first. 6 others followed. All of them had smiled and shaken hands with human diplomats. All of them had spoken of friendship and cooperation. All of them had been planning murder. The ceremony was never about acceptance, Dr. Shin said quietly. It was always an execution. They invited us to our own deaths. Admiral Kwan stood and walked to the window. Outside, the night sky was full of stars. For centuries, humanity had looked at those stars with wonder and hope. They had dreamed of meeting other minds, other souls, other friends. Now those stars seemed cold and hostile. What about the 5 who voted against? He asked. Director Baek checked his notes. They opposed the plan. Some argued that humans could be useful. Others believed the killing was wrong. But they were outvoted, and they stayed silent. Silent, Admiral Kwan repeated. They knew what would happen, and they said nothing. Yes, Admiral. Kwan turned back to face the room. Have the people seen the vote document? Not yet. We were waiting for your order. Release it. Let everyone see the truth. Within hours, the document spread across Earth. People gathered in homes, in parks, in city squares. They watched the evidence together. They saw the vote. They saw the names. And still, they did not riot. Instead, something strange happened. Across every nation, people began to move. Soldiers who had retired years ago put on their uniforms and reported to their old bases. Workers at military factories started their machines without being ordered. Farmers and teachers and doctors lined up at recruitment offices. No one had called them. No one had commanded them. They simply knew what needed to be done. General O watched the reports with wide eyes. I have never seen anything like this, he said. They are not waiting for orders. They are mobilizing themselves. Admiral Kwan nodded slowly. This is what the Council does not understand about humans. They think we are weak because we show kindness. They think we are foolish because we seek peace. They do not understand that our kindness has limits. And when those limits are crossed, we become something else entirely. He walked to the center of the room. 20 years ago, we built a fleet. We built it in secret, hidden in the shadow of the moon. We told ourselves it was for defense. We hoped we would never use it." He looked at each officer in turn. "Wake the sleepers." Deep beneath the lunar surface, lights began to glow. Engines that had been cold for decades hummed to life. 3,000 warships hidden, waiting, forgotten, woke from their long sleep. On Station Meridian, Ambassador Park Tai-Su recorded a final message to the Council. He was still weak, still recovering, but his voice was clear. "We trusted you," he said. "We came to you with open hands and open hearts. We believed you when you called us friends, and you murdered us for it." He paused. "You made a mistake. You killed our people, but you did not kill our spirit. You thought we would weep and accept your lies. You were wrong." The message was sent to every council world. Most leaders ignored it. Councillor Vethra laughed when he watched it. "Listen to him," Vethra said to his aides. "The last human diplomat making threats. What will they do? They have no ships. They have no weapons. They are primitives playing in the dirt of their little world." He deleted the message without another thought. 2 days later, a patrol ship at the edge of council space sent an urgent report. Something was coming. Something big. "How many ships?" the station commander asked. The patrol officer's voice trembled. 3,000. Maybe more. They just appeared from nowhere. "That is impossible. No species has that many ships." "They are not just any species," the officer said. "They are human." The transmission cut to static. On the bridge of the flagship ESV Judgment, Admiral Quan Jae-min looked at the stars ahead. Behind him floated the largest fleet ever assembled by humanity. 3,000 ships, 50 million soldiers, and one simple mission. "Justice," he said softly. "Not revenge, justice." But in his heart, he wondered if there was really any difference. Ambassador Park Tai-Su stood before the great doors of the Galactic Council chamber and took a deep breath. 40 years. It had taken humanity 40 years to reach this moment. 40 years of proving themselves. 40 years of following every rule, meeting every demand, and showing the galaxy that humans were worthy of respect. Today, Earth would finally become a member of the Council of United Species. The doors opened with a soft hiss, and Park stepped inside. Behind him walked 200 of Earth's finest diplomats, scientists, and officers. Among them was Lieutenant Commander Yoon Hana, his security chief. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that never stopped moving. The chamber was massive. It stretched upward for hundreds of meters, filled with floating platforms where representatives from dozens of alien species watched. Some had scales. Others had feathers. A few looked like nothing Park had ever seen before. All of them stared at the humans walking below. "Stay calm," Park whispered to his team. "This is a day of celebration." Hana said nothing. Her eyes moved from face to face, platform to platform. Something felt wrong to her, but she could not explain what. At the center of the chamber stood the high table, where the 12 senior counselors waited. The most important among them was Counselor Vethra, a tall insectoid creature with gleaming black eyes and clicking mandibles. He was the one who had pushed hardest for humanity's acceptance. He had spoken in their favor when others called humans dangerous. He had been their friend. Or so they believed. "Ambassador Park," Vethra said. His voice translated through the speakers that all species used. "On behalf of the Council, I welcome humanity to our family." Park bowed deeply. "Council of Vethra, Earth is honored beyond words. We come in peace and friendship." The chamber filled with polite sounds of approval from the watching aliens. Park felt his heart swell with pride. His grandfather had dreamed of this day. His father had worked toward it. Now he, Park Tai-Su, would sign the accord that made it real. Before the signing, Vethra said, we must observe tradition. He raised one of his 4 arms, and servants appeared carrying trays. On each tray sat a small cup filled with dark liquid. The drink of trust, Vethra explained. Every new member species drinks it to show faith in the Council. It is harmless to all known life forms. We have tested it on human samples to be certain. Park nodded. He had read about this ceremony. He had prepared for it. Behind him, Hana stepped forward. Ambassador, perhaps we should... Lieutenant Commander, Park said gently. This is not the time for caution. This is the time for trust. Hana stopped. She watched the servants distribute cups to every human in the chamber. She noticed that the Vethra delegation's hands trembled slightly as they worked. Microtremors, signs of stress or excitement. She opened her mouth to speak again, but Park had already raised his cup. To peace, he said. To friendship. To the stars we will explore together. 200 humans drank. The liquid was sweet and warm. Park smiled at the taste. Around him, his people laughed and shook hands and embraced their new alien colleagues. For exactly 18 minutes, everything was wonderful. Then junior diplomat Cho Min-ho collapsed. At first, Park thought the young man had fainted from excitement. Then another diplomat fell. Then another. Then 20 more. What is happening? Park shouted. He turned to Vethra, but the counselor had already backed away. His black eyes showed no surprise. No concern. Only satisfaction. Hana caught Park as his legs weakened. She was dizzy too, but somehow she stayed upright. Her vision blurred, but she could see her colleagues screaming as their bodies twisted in agony. The drink, she gasped. It was poison. All around them, humans died. The pathogen worked fast and cruel. It attacked the nervous system, causing unbearable pain before stopping the heart. Scientists collapsed over their notes. Soldiers fell in their uniforms. Diplomats who had spent their lives building bridges died reaching for help that would never come. 198 humans died in the council chamber that day. Park and Hana survived. Later, doctors would discover they shared a rare genetic mutation that slowed the pathogen's effects. It was pure luck. Nothing more. As Park lay on the cold floor, too weak to move, he heard Vethra speaking to the other counselors. A tragedy, the insectoid said. It seems humans cannot tolerate our ceremonial drink. Their biology is simply too fragile. We tried to save them, but they died too quickly. Lies, Park whispered. No one heard him. But across the chamber, dying diplomat Cho Min-ho was not done yet. With the last of his strength, he activated the emergency transmitter hidden in his uniform. It was a device all diplomatic teams carried. It was meant for disasters. This was a disaster. The transmitter sent everything to Earth. Every image. Every word. Every scream. The footage showed humans dying while aliens watched. It showed Vethra's face, calm and pleased. It showed counselors exchanging looks of approval. Then Cho died, and the transmission ended. In the council chamber, Vethra ordered the bodies removed. Clean this mess, he said. We will announce that humans were not ready for galactic society. Their primitive bodies could not survive even our simplest ceremonies. The galaxy will mourn them briefly and forget them forever. The other counselors nodded. This had been the plan all along. But they had made one mistake. They had assumed that killing 200 humans would break Earth's spirit. They had assumed that humanity would mourn, accept the lie, and fade into silence. They did not understand humans at all. 8 hours later, Park Tae-soo woke in a medical bay. Hana sat beside him, pale but alive. The others? He asked. She shook her head. Tears ran down her face. Park closed his eyes. He thought of Cho Min-ho, who had loved poetry. He thought of Dr. Kang, who had brought pictures of her grandchildren. He thought of all the bright, hopeful people who had walked into that chamber, believing they were making history. They had made history, just not the kind they expected. The transmission, Hana said softly. Earth received it. All of it. They know what really happened. Park opened his eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke 5 words that would change the galaxy forever. Tell Earth I am alive. 12 hours later, on a small blue planet in an unfashionable corner of the Milky Way, an emergency beacon activated. It was a very old beacon. It had not been used in 300 years. But it worked perfectly. And it meant only one thing. Earth was going to war. Word count, 1,198.